But the melody lingers on. You and the song is gone, but the melody lingers on. The moon's descending, but is found by the break of dawn. You and the song is gone, but the melody lingers on. We need the light of the moon. We sang a love song that
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
Blue Coal presents The Shadow, a man of mystery who strikes terror in the very... All signs point to a severe winter. Be prepared. If you want to be sure of even the...
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Rourke. I'm an agent with the U.S. Treasury Department. Are you Liam O'Leary?
Well, who else would I be? I got the eyes of an O'Leary, the nose of an O'Leary, the ears of an O'Leary, and... of an O'Leary.
Yes, well, I take it that's a good thing?
Well, a lot of it was for me. And it was for Mrs. O'Leary, too. Now, what can I do you for?
I've sent you several letters, Mr. O'Leary. Actually, I've sent you 12 letters since October, all marked personal and confidential.
Ah, so you're the fella who's been wasting all that postage. Those letters were addressed to Mr. Liam, L-A-I-M O'Leary, not Liam, L-I-A-M. You know, it's illegal to open other people's mail.
But you got the letters? Surely you must have realized it was just a typo.
A what?
A typo. A clerical error?
But how am I supposed to know that? Are you suggesting I open Mr. Liam O'Leary's mail? I'd hate to think Liam O'Leary would open my mail.
Mr. O'Leary, Liam, can I come in? I really need to speak with you, and it's not something we should discuss on your doorstep here.
Not so fast. Tell me, Mr. Rourke, where do your people come from?
Excuse me?
Your parents and grandparents, where do they come from?
Kalamazoo on my father's side, and Flint on my mother's.
And before that?
Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
No, before that. Where in the old world are you from?
I don't see what this has to do with anything.
In 25 years, I've never written English in this house, and I'm not about to start on St. Patrick's Day.
My grandfather was from County Kerry. My father changed our name from O'Rourke to Rourke in '09.
Well, why didn't you say so, Mr. O'Rourke? Come on in.
It's just Rourke, Mr. O'Leary.
Come sit over here and tell me how I can help an agent for fine government.
Dr. Schmidt, I wanted to thank you for coming over tonight.
Think nothing of it. Sometimes it's hard for us to judge these things for ourselves. Our loved one starts acting odd, and we say, this is nothing, it'll all go away. But it does not go away. It gets worse until our loved one is lost forever. It is very smart of you to let me examine your father, but don't let him know I'm a psychiatrist.
Dad, this is Gertrude Schmidt from work. I've invited her over for dinner.
It's a pleasure to meet such a veteran young woman. Daughter, this is Mr. O'Rourke, and he says he's here to take our land, our property, our house, and our good name.
Mr. Rourke, Jim, what are you doing here? Mr. Rourke's been a regular at the diner for months. How can we help you?
Mrs. McConnell, the fact of the matter is that I'm with the Treasury Department, and I'm here regarding a serious matter involving your father.
What on earth could the Treasury Department want to do with my father?
So, how did you like today's show?
It was wonderful. The shadow finally unmasked the Silver Skull.
It was John C. Wolverhampton, wasn't it? Like I said it would be.
How did you know?
He was an English lord, wasn't he? I knew the shadow would figure it out. He's a smart one. As smart an Irishman as you'll ever meet.
But Grandpa, the shadow's real name is Lamont Cranston. And he's rich. And when he talks, he doesn't sound like an Irishman. He sounds more like a movie actor.
That's because the shadow's not real, silly. That's Orson Welles on the radio. He's the movie actor playing the shadow. Mom has a crush on him.
Naturally he doesn't go on the radio himself. As for Orson Welles, don't you know his real name is Orson O. Welles?
Are you sure? Is that true? Is he really Irish?
I remember reading that very thing in a movie magazine.
It's a shame you doubt an old man, Francis O'Farrell. You better get home before your mom and pop have to send out a search party after you. And you others, you have to leave me alone for about an hour or two. After all, my leprechaun won't show up unless I'm by myself.
I want to meet him. Remember? You promised that you'd ask him if I could see him.
I'll ask, but don't be getting your hopes up. Leprechauns are shy around them they don't know. Roscommon's shyer than most.
Mrs. Jones says leprechauns aren't real.
That's your school teacher, isn't it? The one that wears them heathen dresses above her knees.
Yes, sir.
Now stay here, Francis. Leprechauns are as real as you and me. They're just not partial to big folk, especially in places like Detroit where there are so many English and Scottish and non-Irish about. Always remember, wherever they're Irish, they're leprechauns. Now, you two children run along and I'll tell you about my leprechaun tomorrow.
Tell us now! Tell us now!
I'm afraid there just isn't time. Roscommon's due within the hour.
I'd be interested in hearing this story too, Mr. O'Leary, if you can find a fraction of time to tell it.
Well, maybe a minute or two. What do you say, Mr. O'Rourke? You have a minute to spare?
Rourke. Of course. I'd love to hear about your leprechaun too.
First off, Roscommon really isn't my leprechaun, strictly speaking. You can't own a leprechaun. They ain't like gnomes or pixies or willing to sell their freedom for a warm bed and a hot meal. If I had to describe it, I'd say Roscommon and I are friends, but then you really can't be friends with a leprechaun either. They're too tricky, you see. It's all part of their nature. Let's just say I look forward to seeing him every year, and I think he looks forward to seeing me as well.
It started over 60 years ago in County Kilkenny, in the old country, and I was even smarter than Francis and Ciara. And the morning I met Roscommon, this guy was filled with clouds that were blacker than an English heart. It rained for 3 hours. Then, just as quickly as it started, the clouds disappeared faster than the truth from an Englishman's lips. Then, I saw the biggest, brightest, most beautiful rainbow that's ever graced the skies of Ireland. It took me the better part of the day before I found the rainbow's end. Now, it meant skipping school and guaranteed spanking with the briar switch when I got home. It meant crossing old man McGuire's potato field, and him having hounds he always loosed on his children. And then it meant piercing the darkness of Buckley Woods, a place so filled with mystery and magic that even the bravest souls walked the 10 miles around it rather than risk the certain doom that waited there. But I scarce considered the danger. So it was a small clearing, deep inside Buckley Woods, that I heard a sound so terrible it froze the blood in me veins. Someone was moaning, wheezing, whimpering, and whining.
No sooner had I stepped into that clearing, those horrible sounds stopped. Sitting on the ground, his back against the rainbow, an overturned pot in front of him, sat the leprechaun, Roscommon.
It was from him that an unearthly sound had come. and the only thing that could have ended his woeful cry of desolation was the sight of a human.
What did he look like? Was he tiny? Was he wearing green?
Yeah, but, granddaughter.
Leprechauns are small, but not small enough to fit in your pocket. Roscommon is about 2.5 feet tall. And all leprechauns wear green. Many of them wear red. Though Roscommon is partial to purple, though he does wear a green hat, just like Grandpa's.
Exactly right. It's comforting to know some people still listen when I speak. Well, that's the state I found him in. In between bouts of crying, he told me that I had been the second big person to find him that day. Someone else had been to him and taken all his gold from him.
What happened next? Did he run? Did you have to chase him?
Well, what happened was, I'd caught him fair and square. But, as he'd already been caught once that day, he tried to claim that my catching him didn't count. But I knew better. 300 gold coins is what a leprechaun's pot holds, and 300 gold coins was old.
What did you do? Did you get your gold?
Yes and no. I couldn't take from him what he didn't have, but he pledged that day to make good his debt, and he has done every St. Patrick's Day for the last 64 years. He's been working since that day to build up his pot of gold again. You see, a leprechaun's gold is forged from the happiness in the hearts of Irish folk the world around. But with the hard times we Irish have faced, that happiness can be a bit stingy. As a good Irishman, I've agreed to take only half the gold he's able to conjure each year.
Mr. O'Leary, is that the explanation you want me to give my supervisor for your having violated Executive Order 6102?
Executive Order 6102?
It's an order signed by President Roosevelt 3 years ago, which says that an American can own no more than $100 worth of gold.
Mr. O'Leary, do you have gold coins?
Maybe I have and maybe I haven't. But I don't see how it's the government's business one way or another. I earned my gold fair and square.
My father's joking. It's a little game he plays with the neighborhood children and Ciara. Does it look like we have gold coins to spend?
I'd be happy to explain further. Maybe...
Ciara, Francis, why don't you go outside and play?
But I want to hear about Grandpa's gold.
I think you've heard enough about Grandpa's gold already. Now go over to Francis's house and tell Mrs. O'Farrell I'll be over to get you in a half an hour.
I hate being a kid. Come on, Francis.
Are you comfortable speaking in front of Mrs. Schmidt? I don't mean to offend, but this is very personal.
Mrs. Schmidt is a friend. I can't imagine you could say anything that I wouldn't want her to hear.
Very well. Over the past 4 years, $700 worth of gold coins have been found in a 10-block radius here in the West End. The most troubling thing about these coins is their purity. The British make the purest gold coins in the world, 91.667%. These gold coins are 99.9999% gold, and the remaining 0.0001% something our chemists can't identify.
Magic.
What?
The 0.001% your fancy chemists can't figure out is the magic the leprechauns use to forge the gold.
Papa, please. What does all this have to do with my father?
It means whoever made them has a large, sophisticated operation, and every merchant who received them has identified your father as the man who spent them.
There must be some mistake.
I'm afraid there's no mistake. Mr. O'Leary, you might find it hard to believe, but I'm hoping that you have an innocent explanation for how a man unemployed for 5 years has thousands of dollars in gold coins.
I already told you, Roscommon brings me my gold. And yes, I knew there'd be a problem when President Roosevelt stuck his nose in my business. I even asked Roscommon if he could pay me in something other than gold, but he said he couldn't. Something about the Magical Creatures Precious Metals Treaty of 1438, restricting leprechauns to the conjuring of only gold.
Papa, this is serious. No more talk of leprechauns and pots of gold.
Nonsense? It wasn't nonsense all the time you begged me to tell you about Roscommon.
Papa, I was a child. Now I'm too old to believe in leprechauns, pots of gold, and happy endings.
Too old to believe in happy endings. Why, Layla O'Leary McConnell. Don't you know that of all the creatures on this earth with their own particular kind of magic, we humans are the only ones who can make happy endings?
Papa, is your living without Mama and me living without Jamie a happy ending? Is our struggling to keep home and hearth every day a happy ending? I can't be that little girl who believes in bright futures and loves hearing about Roscommon anymore. And neither can your granddaughter. You have to let her grow up. What's going to happen? Surely you can see he's no criminal mastermind. There must be some mistake.
I wish there were, but we know he hasn't worked in 5 years. We know your husband didn't have any life insurance. We know that you're barely scraping by working at Cosgrove's Plumbing as a secretary and whatever you can pick up waitressing on Friday and Saturday nights.
So you've been spying on me? That's what all of our talks after work were about? You were investigating me? Besides, you left out my father's pension from Standard Steel. $16 a week.
Ms. McConnell, your father doesn't have a pension. He lost it when Standard Steel went bankrupt 4 years ago.
That doesn't make any sense. Papa, tell him about your pension.
What I do with me money is me own business.
So, then it's true? You lost your pension 4 years ago? What else?
Part of my job was investigating not only the suspects, but the people in their lives. That's why I stopped by the diner that first time. But that's not why I kept coming back.
My life, my father's life, is none of your business. And all this time, I thought...
Mrs. McConnell, Layla!
You're a fine one. And here I'm starting to take a liking to you. Well, I'm going to go up to my room to wait for Roscommon. And when I come back down, you better be gone, Mr. Roarke.
So, you're in love with Miss McConnell?
Well, for Pete's sake, what would make you say something like that?
She's still very attractive, isn't she? Despite everything she's been through.
Of course she's attractive. Anybody can see that. She's more than attractive. She's beautiful. Smart, too. And kind. And generous. And when she smiles, it's like everything good in the world washes over you. But that doesn't mean I'm in love with her.
I'm sure that's true, Mr. Rourke.
It doesn't matter. I've made such a mess of things this evening. What do you know about all this?
I'm afraid that Miss McConnell and I have told a bit of a fib. You see, I don't work with her. I am a psychiatrist. Miss McConnell asked me to come over to examine her father.
Look, I've got nothing against the old man, but he needs to explain to me where he got that gold, or it's certain he'll be arrested in a couple of days.
He already has.
Already has what?
He's already explained where he's got the gold, from a leprechaun named Rosscommon. What you need to understand is that Mr. O'Leary is experiencing hallucinations and memory loss. Before Mrs. O'Leary died, Roscommon was just a bedtime story Mr. O'Leary told Miss McConnell when she was a child. Now he is just a central figure in a elaborate fantasy world. If Mr. O'Leary can't demonstrate that he can distinguish fantasy from reality, I'll have no choice but to recommend that he be institutionalized at Kings Park Psychiatric Center.
We've talked so much the last few months, but she never hinted that there was a problem with her father.
think I'll let the two of you talk for a moment. Layla, I'm going to go find your father and have a private chat with him.
I'd like
My
to...
father... I'm not usually prone to tears. You wouldn't know it, but I went a whole year after Jamie died without crying. It caused quite the scandal, the widow having no tears at the funeral. But lately it feels like I cry over everything.
Nothing wrong with a good cry.
Mr. Rourke.
Call me Jim. I think we know each other well enough for that.
Jim, I always thought I knew exactly how much money we had between my work and Papa's pension. But every other month it's been a struggle to pay the Edison, and Ciara hasn't had a new pair of shoes in 2 years. God knows what I'm going to do when she starts growing again.
You never confronted him about where he got the money for the car and radio?
Of course. But whenever I pushed him about it, he just retreated farther into his fantasies. He's always told the story about catching a leprechaun. And it used to be part of a special bond between us. But now I hate it. And he has Ciara memorizing it and repeating it back to him.
And that's why you brought Dr. Schmidt here today?
She told you? I don't want to send him away. I don't want him to go one of those terrible places, but I don't know what else to do.
You don't do anything right now. Sometimes the best decision is no decision.
What if men from your office show up tomorrow and arrest him? What if he's involuntarily committed?
If your father can provide a reasonable explanation, I'm sure we can avoid his being arrested.
I know he bets the horses and plays the numbers. He never tells me how much he bets or what he loses. But he can't be losing. Brannigan's people never stop by.
Oscar Brannigan, the gangster?
Yes, he's the bookie for the West End.
Well, that would explain why your father has the extra money, but where did the gold coins come from?
Buying them would be the kind of thing he would do now with his delusion about Roscommon. You'll help him, won't you? You have to see. No matter how he got them, it was innocent on his part.
That's why I'm here. Can you think of some place your father may have left more coins or left a clue as to how he came about them?
I know there's nothing in his room. I clean that every week. He could have something in the basement, but he knows Ciara and her friends play down there. The car. He's the only one that goes near it. I haven't driven it in months. Follow me.
And that's how Benjamin Franklin's real name was old Franklin.
That's very fascinating, Mr. O'Leary. But I'd like to hear more about Roscommon.
It's pretty much as they said. He comes by every St. Patrick's Day, brings me my gold, and stays long enough to play a game of chess.
Miss McConnell, may I have a quick word with you?
Of course.
Still upset with me?
Well, I can't stay mad at another Irishman. It's a weakness. Although I can't see how me having a bit of gold is anybody's business but mine.
Mr. O'Leary, I think I'm right in telling you about something. Dr. Schmidt isn't who she says she is. She doesn't work with Layla. She's actually a doctor from Kings Park Psychiatric Center. Layla called her here tonight because she's concerned about you.
Concerned? Concerned about what? That I forget things more than I used to, or get confused now and then? Well, let me see how you do on your 73.
It's all this talk about Roscommon and leprechauns. Dr. Schmidt's concerned that you actually believe it.
And if I do?
Not many people believe in leprechauns, Mr. O'Leary. But one would think that if they were real, someone would have snapped a picture of one of them at some point or another, or that a group of people might have seen a leprechaun all at the same time.
First of all, leprechaun pictures can't be taken. They'll try to find the film ruined. It's
second. I've already told you how shy the little people are around us big, lumbering, clumsy hulks.
Tell me, Mr. Rourke, do you believe in the virgin birth?
Of course.
And do you believe the earth is round, circles around the sun, rotates on its axis?
Naturally.
Do you believe in the law of gravity?
Of course.
You believe all that. But you ever know a woman who gave birth a virgin? Ever seen the earth from space, or heard, seen, tasted gravity?
You know I haven't. But surely you're not comparing these to believing in leprechauns, are you?
And why wouldn't I?
See here, Mr. O'Leary. Let's say you do believe in leprechauns. Is it necessary to talk about it all the time? Couldn't you just keep it to yourself?
Of course I gotta keep it to myself. But why should I?
Think about this. Where will your granddaughter be in 10 years without her grandfather to help raise her up properly? She's just at the age where she needs a good man, a good Irish man, to help her become a proper young woman. You wouldn't want her to end up like the English with their high-hem skirts and low-cut tops, would you? And what if, instead of attending college at Notre Dame or Georgetown or Boston College, she were to end up among the English at Harvard or Princeton or Yale?
No. In the name of the Holy Mother herself, no. Are you trying to torture me, Mr. O'Rourke?
Not at all, Mr. O'Leary. I'm just pointing out, one Irishman to another, the sad fate that awaits your granddaughter if you're not there to help guide her.
Dad, I've got something to talk to you about.
Just a minute, daughter.
Layla, before you say anything, I think your father has something he wants to tell us. Mr. O'Leary?
I can see the Treasury Department isn't interested in me. Funny little stories about a leprechaun. I guess it's time to quit pretending and tell the truth. I suppose it was just easier to say that Roscommon brought him. I certainly preferred that story to the truth, and after a while I could almost believe it myself. I suppose I was just too ashamed to admit how I found him. I found him. No, that's not right. I stole them 4 years ago. The same week I got a letter from Standard Steel telling me I'd wasted 25 years of my life. They were bankrupting and my pension was lost. I got in the number 19 to go there and give them a piece of my mind. It was the least they owed me. The bus went a couple of blocks before another man got on. And I recognized him, but he didn't recognize me at all. It was Jamie McGee, Brannigan's collection man. When he got off, he left his briefcase. Yeah. To this day, I don't know what came over me. I got out of the briefcase and got off at the next stop. I thought there might be something valuable. Well, I hid it in the basement. I didn't even try to open it for weeks. I kept waiting for one of Brannigan's other people to show up. But that never happened, and when I opened it, there were 59 gold coins. There were 15 left.
Mr. O'Leary, you took an awful gamble.
Yeah, I knew that. But I was blinded by me pride. All my life I've been someone Layla could look up to, and look what I become. Common criminal.
You'll have to surrender the remaining gold pieces to me, but since there's nothing in your history to suggest criminal activities, I think the most you'll be looking at is a suspended sentence.
Thank you.
Now, daughter, what is it you wanted me to talk about?
Nothing, Papa. It'll hold.
Miss McConnell, if I could have another word with you.
Everything's all right. Really.
I beg you to reconsider. My opinions about things hasn't changed.
But mine have.
Then I'm afraid I won't be able to stay for dinner.
Well, it was a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Schmidt.
It was a pleasure to meet you as well, Mr. Leary.
Oh, goodness. It's been a half hour already. I have to get over to the O'Farrells to collect Ciara.
I'll walk over with you.
We'll be back in a few minutes.
Take your time, daughter.
Where is everybody?
Dr. Schmidt couldn't stay for dinner anyway. And your mother's, off with Mr. O'Rourke, getting her happy ending.
I wanted them to see the treasure.
What treasure? Diamonds.
I found them in the mailbox with that note. I tried to read it, but I can't understand what it says.
That's because it's in Gaelic, the language of the old country.
What does it say?
Well, it looks like we won't have to worry about spending gold coins anymore. Apparently, the magical creature's precious metals treaty of 1438 ain't so ironclad after all.
Is it from Roscommon? Is it?
Well, let's just say that from a friend. Here, let's find a place to hide these. And why don't we keep this our little secret? At least until Mr. O'Rourke has walked your mother down the aisle.
Grandpa, tell me again how you met Roscommon.
Sure. But first off, Roscommon ain't really my leprechaun. See, not really